there, thank you for joining us in Planet America's Situation Room. I'm John Barron.
I'm Licciardello, and once again, we have a situation.
U.S. troops have arrived in Israel to monitor a fragile ceasefire in Gaza.
President Donald Trump is headed to the Middle East in what he is describing as a very special event.
And I think it's going to be a lasting peace, hopefully an everlasting peace.
As the Gaza ceasefire gets underway, will this be the start of an everlasting peace?
There's still no peace in Washington as the government shutdown drags on, and another Trump enemy is indicted. But first,
there has been rare bipartisan support for the Phase 1 ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, brokered by the Trump administration, with Democrats in Washington, D.C. even giving grudging praise to the American president.
Give President Trump credit for it, along with others who have played a part.
It's nice to give credit for what's happened, John, but there is a fundamental question that we need to answer first, which is, what did just happen? I mean, we know some basics. We know that Hamas is expected to release all 20 living Israeli hostages. We know they've agreed to start releasing the remains of dead hostages as well. We know that Israelis will be releasing about 250 Palestinian prisoners and 1,700 detainees from Gaza. We know that humanitarian aid for Gaza is expected to be increased to about 600 trucks a day. We know that a multinational force of about 200 troops will monitor the ceasefire overseen by America, but including forces from Egypt, Qatar, Turkey and the UAE, although no actual US forces will apparently be on the ground. All of those developments incredibly welcome, and 500,000 displaced Palestinians have already returned to Gaza City, so they're voting with their feet. But the clarity ends there. Trump's proposal last week called for Hamas to disarm and to play no further role in the governance of Gaza, but Hamas has not agreed to that at all. In fact, a Hamas official has explicitly said they will not agree to disarm. They said the proposed weapons handover is out of the question and not negotiable. And that's not the only sticking point. Israel has agreed to withdraw to a point where they control about 53% of Gaza, and Trump's proposal suggests further withdrawals to about 40% control, even 15% control. But there is no clear timeline for when any of this withdrawing is supposed to happen, and Israel has been a little cagey about it all. So I'd suggest that's another open question, and there are plenty more where those came from. Hopefully some of them are going to be resolved this week in Egypt, where they'll be holding an international summit to discuss exactly what just happened and where it's going to go from here. More than 20 world leaders will be noting this one out, including Trump. So maybe, John, we are going to know what to give Trump credit for in a few more days.
Yes, the deal was done. We just don't know what the deal is yet. Republicans, though, they're not waiting. They were, in fact, already talking up the prospects of Donald Trump winning this year's Nobel Peace Prize even before the ceasefire came into effect.
No one else could have done that in the world but the president. And the idea that he was able to do it definitely deserves a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, Mark Wayne is convinced.
It's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. Even Israeli farmers were getting in on the act.
Farmers in northern Israel are echoing that message in a big way. A massive message cut into their fields reading Nobel for Trump.
So much anticipation, and then came the big announcement.
The Nobel Peace Prize for 2025 goes to a brave and committed champion of peace.
Yeah, righto, get on with it.
To a woman.
Wait, what now?
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2025 to Maria Corina Machado.
Oh, well, maybe next year, by which time we will know whether this peace deal in Gaza has stuck or whether it's gone the same way as the two earlier ceasefire agreements. Maria Machado, by the way, is a leader of the opposition in Venezuela, which is ruled by far-left dictator Nicolas Maduro. President Trump was asked how he felt about missing out on the Nobel Peace Prize to her.
The person who actually got the Nobel Prize called me and said, I'm accepting this in honor of you because you really deserved it. That a very nice thing to do. I didn't say then give it to me, though. I think she might have. She was very nice.
Look, Machado may have really thought Trump deserved the prize more than her, or like so many others in Trump's orbit these days, she's figured out that flattery will get you pretty much everywhere with him. For example, Secretary of State Marco Rubio at last week's cabinet meeting.
One day, perhaps the entire story will be told about the events of yesterday, but suffice it to say, it's not an exaggeration that none of it would have been possible without the President of the United States being involved.
Yes, so good. And Marco was just getting warmed up.
Not only is there no other leader in the world that could have put this together, Mr. President, but frankly, I don't know of any American president in the modern era that could have made this possible. Because of the actions you have taken unrelated to this and because of who you are and what you've done and how you're viewed.
That was some pretty impressive sucking up right there, particularly from a guy who, let us not forget, used to go around saying stuff like this.
But I am not going to allow the party of Reagan and the conservative movement to be taken over by someone who isn't just a conservative, but is a con artist.
Yeah, it kind of turns out you did. But how about you, Secretary of War and former Fox Weekend host Pete Hegseth?
And I just want to echo what Marco said. It is a personal honor to be able to witness the way you lead and negotiate.
So nice.
Hegseth aims to please, John. But Trump isn't just about people paying tribute to him personally. He's not. In the case of this peace agreement, Trump wanted to make sure the credit was shared with the real hero of the hour, his tariffs.
The tariffs have brought peace to the world. I'm telling you, they brought peace to the world. And not only here, but with so many other deals. We're not going to deal with people that fight. We're not going to deal, and we're going to put tariffs on you. We're not going to let you deal in the United States. We'll put tariffs on you. And without that, without the tariffs, I mean, far more than even the money that we're taking in, which is trillions of dollars, essentially trillions of dollars. Far much more importantly, it gives you a tremendous road to peace and the saving of millions of lives.
I'm sorry, I know Trump's getting a lot of love this week, but that is a bridge too far.
Yeah, maybe the tariffs are going to get the Nobel Peace Prize. For more on this, we spoke to one of America's most insightful Middle East analysts, Hussein Ibish. He's senior resident scholar at the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington, D.C. Hussein Ibish, welcome to Planet America. President Trump says this is the start of a strong, durable and everlasting peace. Do you share his confidence?
Everlasting, no. Strong and durable, I'm skeptical about. I think that phase one of this multi-phase agreement has a good chance of limping along because all sides need it. And in particular, the Israelis have this very long history of getting what they want out of the first phase of a multi-phase agreement and then not implementing any further phases. So the most dramatic recent example is the Biden plan, which was a three-phase peace plan for Gaza, where Israel implemented the first phase from mid-January to mid-March, and then decided that was enough and bombarded Gaza again, killing 450 people, at least 300 of them children, and started the war again. An earlier example of this, I believe, at least from an Arab point of view, is the Oslo Accords, when Israel got what they wanted out of the early stages of the agreements and then never moved to implement further stages. So this is an Israeli MO, and they might do it again. Hamas, too, are very duplicitous actors, and there's every chance that they might either decide they've had enough of this and go back to the war, or their fighters might disobey their commanders. Their commanders are in Turkey and Qatar, and they're political chiefs, and the local military leaders in Gaza might simply decide, no, time to go back to the war.
Hussein, are there any realistic circumstances under which Hamas would willingly disarm? And if so, what are those circumstances?
I'm a heretic on this. I think there are. I think, look, it's a bit complicated, but this marks the end of a 20-year project for Hamas in Gaza. All right. Although Hamas was founded in Gaza, its base has been in Gaza. It's really a Gaza organization, but still, when they seized control of Gaza in 2007, they really did view it as a springboard into power where the real action is in the Palestinian National Movement, which is in the West Bank, in Ramallah and Jericho and Nablus and places like that, not Gaza City, which is a bit remote. And it turned out to be more of a trap than a springboard. And I think that's why they decided to overthrow the apple cart and throw away everything they built with the October 7 attack and launch a big war with Israel. Now, everything necessary internally and externally to support that war is gone, right? The Assad regime has cut off Iran from that part of the Middle East, the fall of the Assad regime has cut off Iran completely from this part of the Middle East. And all their external supporters, whether it's Turkey or Qatar or everybody else, is fed up with this war. The local population in Gaza is utterly exhausted, and they just don't have any basis of support. So I think the political leaders in Turkey and Qatar have to now think about starting again from zero. And if you're in that situation, why would you rebuild again in Gaza? Why would you, get into a situation where the best case scenario puts you where you were on October 7 when you were fed up, back in the trap? I think they're likely to try to rebuild in the West Bank and try to really challenge Fatah and the PA and the PLO, the secular nationalist groups, for power within the Palestinian national movement on the ground where the action is.
And how much credit do you personally give to President Trump? Some observers have suggested that maybe only he would have been able to exert the kind of pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu required to get us to this point.
I agree with that, actually. I think he deserves a lot of credit. I mean, a perennial harsh critic of President Trump, but yeah, I think so. I think Netanyahu was already under a lot of pressure from the Israeli military, which has been asking what the point of this mission is for about a year and not getting an answer, and losing men the whole time. And then parts of the Israeli public, some of which are focused on hostages, some of which want to end the war. Those two movements tend to come together. But they alone were not enough to get Netanyahu to the table. But when Trump threw his pressure in as well, I think it became irresistible to Netanyahu. And then I think on the other side, Turkey and Qatar, plus a united Arab world, all saying no more war to Hamas, deserve a lot of credit for getting Hamas there as well.
Do you think it's possible for the Gazan people in the foreseeable future to elect a government that Israel would find acceptable?
Probably not, but I don't think the people of Gaza are going to be consulted for an election. And in fact, Gaza is not an independent entity which holds independent elections, right? It's part of the Palestinian Authority area, Area A. And when people say they elected Hamas, their leader, that's completely nonsense. The last two elections were Mahmoud Abbas won by 64% the presidential election in 2005, and then Hamas-backed candidates got 44% of the seats in parliament in 2006. But that's a parliament for the whole voting area in the occupied territories, the West Bank and Gaza. And so they just don't have independent elections in Gaza, and it would be a very bad idea to have one because they are not an independent place, and they shouldn't be and they can't be. They're part of the Palestinian territories.
And finally, Hussein, is there a concern that the lesson from Gaza in the future for military-dominant parties could be that, when in doubt, go more violent, ignore the balance of world opinion and try to thoroughly destroy your opposition before you start the peace process?
You mean from the point of view of Israel and countries in the position of Israel? Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I don't think so, because Israel has not won a victory in Gaza. Israel has not destroyed Hamas. Israel has destroyed its own reputation, and it hasn't achieved peace and stability that it can work with in Gaza. It just left a mess, and it doesn't know what to do. And so I don't think anyone is going to look at Israel's performance in Gaza and say, aha, that's the solution. That's how you do it. You know, I don't think so. So my answer is no. Not if people are thinking rationally about it and looking seriously at what Israel has and has not achieved in Gaza. No.
Hussein Ibish, thanks for joining us on Planet America.
Oh, thank you so much.
Meanwhile, back in Washington, and the government shutdown is dragging on, and the firings are getting underway. Russ Vought, the director of the Office of Management of Budget and a key architect of the Project 2025 Conservative Blueprint for Trump's second term, announcing this week, rather bluntly, the rifts have begun. By rifts, he means reduction in force, by which he means people losing their jobs in federal government departments, including commerce, education, energy, health and human services, housing and urban development, homeland security and treasury. More than 4,100 workers for starters, and health and human services includes the embattled Centres for Disease Control, where, according to Sheryl Stolberg of the New York Times, dozens of disease detectives and high-level scientists were among those who were riffed. But by Saturday, it was revealed that some of those sackings at the CDC were actually a mistake, and they'll now be reinstated. And the same kind of stuff happened back in April, when researchers were wrongly swept up in mass layoffs. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is warning that if the government doesn't reopen soon, there will be insufficient funds for food stamps, meaning as many as 42 million individuals who get nutrition assistance under the SNAP program could be forced to go without. And if those affected programs, jobs and departments sound mostly, if not exclusively, related to the kinds of things that Democrats tend to care more about, well, that is very much the idea.
And it'll be Democrat-oriented because we figure, they started this thing, so they should be Democrat-oriented. It'll be a lot, and we'll announce the numbers over the next couple of days, but it'll be a lot of people, all because of the Democrats.
All because the Democrats? Not entirely true. There is nothing about a shutdown of the government that requires federal workers to be sacked. Some, including the military, are going to be working without being paid as of this week if it keeps dragging on. Others are being furloughed and staying at home without pay. A lot of essential government services, though, are exempt from shutdown, so it's business as usual, although one of the most obvious impacts so far has been at the nation's airports, where some Transport Security Administration staff have been calling in sick rather than continue to work without being paid. And Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is now playing on a loop on screens at the airports so that frustrated travellers know exactly who to blame.
It is TSA's top priority to make sure that you have the most pleasant and efficient airport experience as possible while we keep you safe. However, Democrats in Congress refuse to fund the federal government, and because of this, many of our operations are impacted, and most of our TSA employees are working without pay.
Sorry, what's that about the Hatch Act making it illegal to use government resources for partisan purposes? Never heard of it. Don't know what you're talking about. But I do feel like we're at a turning point in this shutdown, John. And that is, until now, I've felt like the Democrats have had the upper hand. Like, for instance, why is Mike Johnson insisting on the House doing absolutely nothing for the third straight week?
Republicans love to advocate for more work requirements for poor people, people on SNAP, people on Medicaid. Well, I got an idea. Let's have a work requirement for Republicans to show up to Congress and do your goddamn job. I mean, millions of people are about to lose their health care. This is a serious crisis we're in, and we can avoid it. We can avoid people losing their health care, and we can keep the government open. They need to show up.
5 Republican House reps are also saying keep the House open. And interestingly, the loudest voice saying Republicans should be back at work is one of those Republican representatives, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I see the shutdown completely different from maybe my party leadership. And I'm not putting the blame on the president. I'm actually putting the blame on the speaker and Leader Thune in the Senate. This should not be happening.
But so you're putting the blame on the leadership of your party?
Absolutely. We control the House. We control the Senate. We have the White House. I've been vocal saying, you can use the nuclear option in the Senate. This doesn't have to be a shutdown.
She's right, by the way. Republicans could ignore the filibuster any time they want and end the shutdown right then. But even if they don't go that far, they could at least be doing something, not just taking a big holiday. Meanwhile, the Democratic attacks on the expiration of Obamacare subsidies have become very aggressive.
Donald Trump and the Republican Party are hell-bent on taking health care away from 60 million people, closing community clinics, rural hospitals, nursing homes, all so they can keep giving tax breaks to their billionaire friends. It's a disgrace. So Democrats have 3 words for this. No fucking way.
Potty mouth Schumer. And you can tell these attacks are landing because of how defensive Republicans are getting. Mike Johnson's now even suggesting that they were actually going to deal with this healthcare issue all along.
They're lying to you, okay? The healthcare issues were always going to be something discussed and deliberated and contemplated and debated in October and November. It always was. Everybody in the building knows that.
Sure, Mike, no doubt. The only serious misstep from the Democrats was when Chuck Schumer got himself a bit cocky and he boasted the Punch Bowl news about just how every day gets better for us. He then clarified, it's because we've thought about this long in advance and we knew that healthcare would be the focal point of September 30 and we prepared for it. That's all fine. But that first bit sure sounded like Schumer was celebrating the shutdown, and Republicans were all over it. Like, for instance, J.D. Vance tweeting out, better for Schumer, worse for Americans. What a vile sentiment from an alleged leader in our country. Anyway, John, that was all up to now. But this week, we've got the first wave of sackings, like you said. We've also got a bunch of paychecks not going out. You mentioned the military. So the consequences of the shutdown are starting to hit home right now. And this will provide new challenges for both parties. For instance, the Democrats just sent Mike Johnson a letter urging him to bring up legislation to ensure that at least those military personnel you mentioned get paid during the shutdown. Their potential missed first paycheck is on Wednesday. And the Republican congressional leadership doesn't quite know which way to go on this one. I reckon the stakes of the shutdown are going to raise quite rapidly from here, and based on their reactions from this week going forward, I suspect one party is likely to take some real damage. What pay that is, though, we don't know yet.
No, indeed not. Those fortnightly paychecks are the reason why most government shutdowns end before a fortnight, historically. Now, remember that weird social media post from a couple of weeks ago when President Trump seemed to be sending the world a note meant specifically for his Attorney General Pam Bondi, in the process basically admitting to the world that he was applying political pressure to prosecute his enemies.
Pam, I've reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially same old story as last time. All talk, no action, nothing is being done. What about Comey, Adam Shifty Schiff, Letitia? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done.
How wrong he was. He got plenty of action as a result of that after forcing out the prosecutor who said there wasn't enough evidence to lay any charges, and then appointing Trump's personal lawyer Lindsay Halligan as the acting prosecutor. Former FBI Director James Comey was suddenly indicted just days before the statute of limitations was due to expire. Comey had his first court appearance last week. He pleaded not guilty to allegations that he lied to Congress 5 years ago. His lawyers plan to argue the prosecution is politically motivated. They might have a good case there. They think the whole thing should be dismissed rather than heard. Meanwhile, it turns out that that message to Pam was supposed to be private. According to the Wall Street Journal, Trump believed that he'd sent Bondi a direct message, and he was surprised to learn that the world could now see it. As Rick Perry might say, oops. Meanwhile, back in Virginia, and Lindsay Halligan is dutifully working her way through Trump's enemies list.
New York Attorney General Letitia James has been indicted on criminal bank fraud charges. James is being accused of having falsified records to meet certain lending requirements and receive favorable loan terms.
And like Comey, it's hard to see this as anything other than a clear case of payback, and it's also pretty personal. In 2022, Letitia James sued Trump, accusing him of inflating his net worth by billions of dollars, and she did secure an initial conviction. This case against James accuses her of violating a mortgage agreement on a Virginia house that she purchased in 2020 by using it as a rental property. In the US, you can sometimes get a lower loan rate if you say that you're actually going to be living there. But while the case against Trump involved billions of dollars, literally, this case is over a potential saving of under $19,000 over the entire life of the loan. In normal times, that is the kind of sum that the feds just would not bother with. But of course, these are not normal times. Letitia James has denied the claim of fraud, and she's refusing to stand down as Attorney General of New York.
These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost. I'm a proud woman of faith, and I know that faith and fear cannot share the same space. And so today, I'm not fearful. I'm fearless.
And by the way, on the indictment itself, there is a reason that Trump's flunky had to recruit prosecutors from outside her district. Presumably she couldn't find a single prosecutor in her district who wanted to have anything to do with this mess. According to the indictment, there was a rider on James's mortgage that barred James from entering into any agreement that requires her to either rent the property or give any other person any control over the occupancy or use of the property. But then the indictment didn't even allege that James actually entered such an agreement. They just stated she rented out the property for a short period of time and didn't personally use the property herself. But that doesn't directly contradict the rider. She was allowed to do both those things. The rider explicitly says she can rent out the property for short periods. And it also says the property simply must be available primarily as a residence for her personal use. Not that she must live there, it just has to be available. And John, it was largely available. So good luck proving that she intentionally lied when she signed that rider agreement, because it seems to me she actually followed that rider agreement. Seems like a very weak case to me, John.
Yep, it certainly sounds like it.
But now the Senate continues to be divided over Trump's policy of blowing up suspected drug boats in the Caribbean. Trump claims that those airstrikes are saving American lives.
Every one of those boats is responsible for the death of 25,000 American people and the destruction of families. So when you think of it that way, what we're doing is actually an act of kindness.
Seems like a pretty long bow there. No one is forcing people to buy drugs. They do it out of their own free will. We've also seen no evidence that these boats are even heading to America. They don't have enough fuel to get there, for one. But also, Venezuelans usually traffic drugs to Europe, not America. We also don't know if these boats even have drugs on them. And if they do, which drugs? The drugs that kill the most Americans are actually prescription drugs. And then there's fentanyl. But Venezuela tends to traffic cocaine, which far fewer people die from. Trump says 25,000 overdoses per boat. That's how many Americans have recently died from cocaine overdoses all year. And I could go on about the illegality of these strikes for the rest of the show. Lots and lots and lots of question marks there. Still, this is all an undeniable opportunity for a fun new game.
Battleship.
He sank my battleship.
You sunk my battleship. Has now been updated for the Trump era. Introducing alleged Venezuelan drug ship.
You sank my civilian speedboat. Yay! I'm above the law.
With real talking Trump justification.
That was a drug boat. I saw a gang sign. It was an act of kindness.
Yeah, now you're talking.
No evidence, no trial, just explosive fun. Alleged Venezuelan drug ship. Out now.
And that is all for another trip to Planet America. We'll be back right here on ABC TV at 9:35 p.m. on Monday night, or anytime you like on ABC iView, YouTube and Facebook.
And we're going to have Planet America's Weekend Edition on ABC News on Friday night at 8 p.m. Also on iView and online. See you there.